Ooh, well, let's get into it. Let's get straight into it. Misplaced. One of my favourite stories. Well, as I say, I just love these type of stories. And I've just got another one coming up just like this in another couple of books. This one explores the life of Donna Rigg, a young woman who experiences a temporal displacement after a car accident in 2015. She inexplicably wakes up in 1960, where she's taken in by a man called Douglas and his wife, Lynette, who is French. Now, Douglas believes she might be his long-lost sister. And while navigating this unfamiliar era, Donna also realizes her grandparents live in the very bungalow she occupies in the future, allowing her to observe her family's history firsthand. At this moment in time, she has no idea why she slipped back in time. A local vicar eventually discovers her secret through a family heirloom, confirming her impossible journey before she abruptly returns to her own time. Back in the present, a now elderly Douglas reveals he spent decades watching her across the street, waiting for her eventual return. The story concludes with Donna inheriting his home, leaving her with a medical mystery and with a profound connection to her past. Now, there's a lot more going on than that. Far more going on than that. I will admit I love time travel stories. And I know it sounds a bit mad, but I listen to the AI voices and even they seem to like it. In fact, they was very enthusiastic about it. Because, as I said, it's not like going back to the future where you go back in time and think, oh, well, I'll go back and see the Beatles or look at the price of that house and stand there being amazed. Because the truth is, if you went back in time, you'd probably shit yourself and you'd probably have a mental breakdown, especially if you didn't know how you got there or you didn't know how you were going to get back. And that's what this story is all about. I wrote it about 2015, and it's basically a fish out of water story. And there is a great deal more than what I've just mentioned here. Misplaced. It is definitely a story about a person misplaced in time and what would psychologically happen to her should such a thing happen. And there you have it, Misplaced. I hope you enjoy the AI voices. I certainly did. They even made me smile. And takes a lot to make me smile. No, it doesn't. Anyway. Misplaced. Enjoy.
Imagine for a second that you are having the absolute worst night of your life. It is, say, October 2015.
Okay.
You have just been dumped. And not just dumped, but, humiliated in a very public way at a restaurant. You're angry, you're hurt, and you've had way, way too much to drink.
A bad combination.
A terrible combination. And you make the awful decision to get behind the wheel of your car. It's raining, the road is slick with oil and water, and bam, you hit a pillar box, lights out.
It's a scenario that unfortunately happens.
Yeah.
But this is where the story completely veers off the road of, normal reality.
Exactly. Because when you wake up, the world hasn't just changed a little bit. It's completely reset. And we aren't talking about waking up in a hospital bed in a different city.
Yeah.
We are talking about waking up in the same suburb on the very same street, but 55 years in the past.
It is the ultimate displacement nightmare. The geography is identical, but the timeline has just slipped. It's 1960, and all of a sudden, you're an alien on your own turf.
Today, we are unpacking a truly bizarre and really compelling case, the story of Donna Rigg. We're basing this deep dive on a narrative account titled Misplaced
And I think we need to say right up front, this is not your typical time travel story.
No, not at all. This isn't Back to the Future. There's no DeLorean. There's no fun adventure with a wacky scientist.
No, Misplaced reads much more like a psychological horror story or, a very tense domestic thriller. It's set in Clay Hall, a suburb of London, which is usually a pretty sleepy place. But in this account, it becomes this claustrophobic pressure cooker.
So we're going to look at the story not just as a kind of what if, but as a study of grief, of identity, and the just deeply eerie experience of living across the street from your own ancestors.
Which is a terrifying concept if we really stop and think about it. We're going to unpack how a modern woman navigates a post-war world that is, at the same time, familiar and completely hostile. We have to talk about the medical anomalies, the psychological toll, and the uncanny connections between the Rigg family and the people who end up taking Donna in.
So, our mission today is to track Donna's journey from a modern hospital room in 2015 to a Victorian asylum in 1960 and figure out how on earth she survives without a smartphone, a credit card, or even a valid ID.
And we'll explore the idea that maybe time travel isn't a journey you take, but a malady, something you suffer from.
Let's dive right in. The inciting incident. We really need to set the stage in 2015 to understand who Donna Rigg is before her world completely shifts under her feet.
Who is she?
She's 25 years old, she works a pretty normal job at Ilford Town Hall, and she lives alone in a little bungalow in Clay Hall.
On the surface, it all seems fairly standard, but the source material shows you, the cracks in the foundation pretty quickly. She lives alone with her dog, Woofy.
And here's the big one. She's an orphan. Her parents died back in 2008 within just months of each other.
That is such a heavy detail. It's a foundational trauma. To lose both parents so close together, especially when you're young, it creates this massive void.
It means she doesn't have that safety net that so many of us take for granted.
She's untethered. Her main emotional connections in 2015 are her dog and her boyfriend, Cray. And Cray. Well, Cray is a huge problem.
Oh, let's unpack Cray. This guy, he's married.
He's married.
Donna knows this, which, complicates things morally, but she's clearly clinging to him for some kind of stability. And on the night of the accident, he decides that a public restaurant is the perfect place to drop the bomb.
Just brutal. He tells her he's not leaving his wife. He's dumping her. But it's the way he does it. He doesn't just say, it's over. He attacks her character. He calls her unfeeling and unemotional.
That's just unbelievably cruel, calling an orphan unfeeling.
Exactly. It suggests Donna has built up these, emotional walls just to survive the loss of her parents. She's protecting herself. And Cray takes that survival mechanism and twists it into a weapon to use against her.
So it just devastates her. She leaves the restaurant in a state of, a cocktail of grief, rejection, humiliation.
And alcohol. The report says she was 2.5 times over the legal limit.
Which explains the decision-making.
Completely. She gets in her Ford. She's driving through the rain in Clay Hall. She's crying. She's raging. And she just plows right into a pillar box.
Okay, now here is where the details get really specific and become so important later on. She smashes her head. She wakes up in King George Hospital. And the doctors treat a pretty nasty gash on her forehead, but they use a very specific medical technique.
They use glue,
Glue,
Thermobond, or a similar medical adhesive. Now, in 2015, this is absolute standard practice for a clean laceration, especially on the face. It minimizes scarring. Its qual gets effective.
Right. So common we don't even think twice about it. But we need to put a pin in that, because in the grand timeline of medical history, that little patch of glue is basically space-age technology.
It is. It becomes the only physical artifact proving she is from the future. It's the one thing she carries with her that does not belong in 1960.
So she gets treated. She deals with the police, who are obviously charging her with drunk driving, and then she goes home. But home doesn't feel right. This is the part of the source material I found most fascinating. The neurological drift.
Yes. This is what sets Misplaced apart from other stories in this genre. Usually, there's a portal or a machine. Zap, you're there. Here, the transition is biological. It's slow. It starts with her brain literally glitching.
She describes it so vividly. It starts with seeing floaters, which, okay, you get a concussion, you might see spots, but it evolves into something way, way weirder.
She describes seeing geometric patterns, lines and dots that are just overlaid on reality. It's almost as if her visual cortex is struggling to render the world around her correctly. She's seeing the wireframe of reality.
And her behavior changes too. This is so strange. She develops this obsessive-compulsive need to touch walls. She has to feel the brick, the wallpaper. Why do you think that is?
It's a grounding technique. If your vision is failing you, if the world looks like it's dissolving into geometry, you need tactile confirmation that solid objects still exist. It's a desperate attempt to hold on to what's real.
And she also becomes obsessed with moving extremely slowly.
Like literally walking in slow motion. She feels that if she moves at a normal speed, she might just detach from the world entirely. It's like she's subconsciously preparing for a slower, less chaotic era. She's unsyncing from the 21st century.
And then comes the superimposition. This scene on the bus gave me actual chills. She's on a normal bus ride in 2015, looking out the window, and for a moment, the modern world just, it vanishes.
It's a dual reality.
Yeah.
She looks at a block of modern flats, and for a split second, she sees a field where it stands, or an older building that used to be there. It's like a double exposure in a photograph.
Yeah.
The past is bleeding through the present.
That would be absolutely terrifying. You would be convinced you were losing your mind.
Which is exactly what she thinks, and what anyone would think. So she goes back to King George Hospital for an MRI. She assumes she has a brain bleed or some kind of severe damage from the crash.
But the MRI shows something else. She meets a Dr. Corduroy. And the doctor sees an anomaly in her occipital lobe. That's the visual processing center of the brain, right?
Correct. And whatever the doctor sees, it's so alarming, so physically impossible, that she immediately tries to section Donna. To have her committed, she realizes this isn't just a concussion. There is something fundamentally wrong with Donna's brain structure or its activity.
So Donna just panics. She goes into full flight mode. The animal instinct kicks in.
She bites a nurse, literally sinks her teeth into the nurse's arm, and just sprints out of the hospital.
She runs out into the hospital grounds, and this is the threshold. This is the moment. She runs into the woods, away from the modern lights, and she just keeps running until the hospital vanishes behind her.
And when she finally stops running, the transition is complete. But it's not a bang. It's a shift in the atmosphere.
The first thing she notices is the silence.
Yes. Modern London, even the suburbs, has a constant hum. Traffic, distant planes, air conditioning units. It's a background noise we don't even notice until it's gone. In 1960, the world was quieter.
And the visual static, those dots and lines she was seeing, they stop. Her vision clears.
She looks up and she sees the stars. That's such a key detail. In 2015 Elford, the light pollution just washes out the night sky. In 1960, the street lamps were dimmer, they were more widely spaced, and they were blue. Mercury vapor lamps. They gave off this eerie, cold light.
So she's standing there under these blue streetlights, seeing stars she hasn't seen since she was a kid, maybe never. And she still thinks she's just in a dark part of the hospital grounds. She starts walking home, still thinking she's in 2015.
And this is where reality hits her like a truck. She gets stopped by the police.
Now, this encounter is a masterclass in showing, not telling, the difference between the eras. In 2015, if a woman is walking home alone, police might stop and ask if she's okay, if she needs a ride.
In 1960, a woman walking alone at night in a quiet suburb is immediately suspicious. The police car is an old black Wolseley. The officers are aggressive. They don't see a citizen in potential need of help. They see a vagrant or a prostitute.
They comment on her clothes. She's just wearing jeans and a t-shirt.
Which was not standard attire for a young woman in Clay Hall in 1960. Jeans were for, manual labor or maybe rebellious teenagers. To these officers, her clothes signal deviant. They demand ID. She has none. They demand to know where her escort is.
The idea that she needs an escort just to walk down her own street, it's infuriating.
It's the patriarchal structure of the time. Plain and simple. They drag her to the station. And that is when the penny finally drops. She looks up at the wall.
And she sees the calendar, October 1960.
And she faints. It's the only rational response to an utterly impossible reality. Her brain just shuts down.
But fainting lands her in an even worse situation, because now she's a woman with no ID, wearing strange clothes, acting hysterical, who just collapsed in a police station. So where do they send her?
Claybury Mental Hospital.
And for context, in Donna's time in 2015, Claybury had been converted into luxury apartments. There was a pool and a gym.
But in 1960, it was a fully operational Victorian asylum. High walls, barred windows, minimal heating. It was a warehouse for the mentally infirm.
So she escapes a modern hospital only to be locked up in a Victorian one. The irony is just staggering.
It's a cruel twist of fate. She is sectioned again. And here she meets Dr. Armbruster. He's a fascinating character because he really represents the scientific limit of his era.
He diagnoses her with transient global amnesia.
Which is really just a fancy way of saying we don't have a clue why she's so confused. And Donna's trying to tell him the truth. She's screaming that she's from 2015. She knows the queen is going to be an old lady. She talks about cell phones.
And to him, that's just Gibberish. It's classic delusion, textbook symptoms, but
Yeah.
there's the glue.
Yes, the glue. Dr. Armbruster examines the cut on her forehead. He sees the wound is perfectly sealed, but there are no stitches. He's completely baffled by it. He calls it a remarkable technique.
It's the one thing he can't explain away with his 1960s medical knowledge.
It's a physical paradox sitting right there on her face. He's looking at medical technology from 50 years in the future. But because he can't conceptualize time travel, he just assumes she saw a very advanced, maybe a foreign surgeon. It's a crack in his skepticism, but it's not enough to get her out.
Donna realizes pretty quickly that telling the truth is a one-way ticket to, a lobotomy. She has to get out.
The conditions in the ward are just bleak. Drugged patients shuffling around. The whole place smells of boiled cabbage and disinfectant. She learns from another patient that a bar on the toilet window is loose.
The classic prison break.
She squeezes out the window, slides down a drain pipe in the pouring rain. It really does seem to always be raining in her story, and lands in the bushes below. But she twists her ankle in the fall.
So now she's soaking wet, she's injured, she's dressed in a hospital gown, and she's hiding in the bushes of a mental asylum in 1960. She has officially hit rock bottom.
And this is where the story pivots. We leave the medical thriller behind, and we enter a domestic tragedy. Enter Douglas Fitzgibbon.
Douglas. He's such a pivotal figure. He's a local man, an electrical engineer. He's out riding his motorcycle combination, that's a bike with a sidecar, through the rain, and he spots her.
But here is the tragedy of it all. He doesn't see a stranger. He doesn't see an escaped patient in a gown. He sees a ghost.
He thinks she is his sister, Katie.
We really need to unpack this backstory because it drives everything that follows. Katie Fitzgibbon disappeared in 1944 during a V-2 rocket attack.
The V-2s were the really scary ones, right? The silent ones?
They were the silent killers. They were supersonic, so you didn't hear them coming until they had already exploded. The Fitzgibbon parents were killed instantly. The house was completely leveled. But Katie's body was never found.
Oh, wow.
She was likely vaporized or buried so deep in the rubble they just never recovered her. But because there was no body.
Douglas never got closure.
Exactly. For 16 years, he has been living in this suspended state of grief. He's convinced himself she must have survived, that maybe she has amnesia, maybe she wandered off. It's a desperate, almost toxic kind of hope.
And then he sees Donna. She's roughly the right age. She's clearly disoriented. She has no ID. And she's near a mental hospital.
In his mind, all the puzzle pieces just click together perfectly. It's a classic case of confirmation bias. He thinks, my sister has finally come home. He just scoops her up, puts her in the sidecar, and takes her home.
And Donna is trying to tell him, my name is Donna. I'm not your sister.
But Douglas just smiles and thinks, poor Katie, the amnesia is so bad. He refuses to hear it. He is completely locked into his own narrative. He takes her to Heathcote Avenue.
Walking into the Fitzgibbon bungalow for Donna, it must have been like walking into a museum.
It's the texture of the past again. The furniture is heavy, dark wood from the 1930s. There's a coal fire burning in the grate. The house smells of damp wool and coal smoke. There's no central heating, no washing machine.
And no TV. They're all sitting around the radio, the wireless.
It's a world that is smaller, colder, and just harder than the one Donna is used to. But the most interesting element in that house is Ninette.
Ninette, Douglas's wife. I loved her character in the source material. She's French, a war survivor herself. She lost an eye in a bombing in Paris.
Right. She wears a glass eye and walks with a limp. Ninette wears her history on her body. And unlike her husband, she's a complete pragmatist. She is grounded in reality. She takes one look at Donna, and she does not see Katie.
She sees a stranger.
She sees a woman in strange clothes with a strange attitude and a strange accent. She knows, deep down, this is not Douglas's long-lost sister.
But
She also sees how happy Douglas is. He's radiant. For the first time in years, his grief is lifted. So she makes a choice. She decides to play along.
that is such a heavy compromise to make, to live with a total stranger in your home just to keep your husband happy.
It creates this incredible tension in the house. You have Douglas living in his fantasy world, Ninette living in the real world but keeping silent, and then there's Billy, their teenage son.
And Billy is just totally checked out of this whole drama, right?
Completely. He's the prototype of the 60s teenager. He's getting into rock and roll. He feels stifled by his parents' obsession with the war. He honestly doesn't care if Donna is his aunt or an alien from Mars. He just wants to escape the suffocation of that bungalow.
So Donna is trapped in the middle of this. To keep a roof over her head, she has to go along with the amnesia narrative. She has to wear Nanette's old clothes. She has to eat their food.
And the food shock is real. We forget how bland and, well, heavy English food was in 1960. Suet puddings, vegetables boiled into submission, dripping. Donna finds it greasy and nauseating. It's another way her 21st century body is just rejecting this era.
But the food is the least of her worries, because we absolutely have to talk about the neighbors. This is the part of the story that just truly blew my mind.
The proximity. This is what makes Misplaced so unique. Donna isn't just in 1960s London. She's in Clay Hall on Heathcote Avenue, and she's living in a bungalow that is literally right across the street from her own future home.
She can look out the front window and see the house she will one day inherit. And living in that house right now are her grandparents, Jim and Gertrude Rigg.
It's the uncanny valley of genealogy. It's one thing to see an old photo of your grandparents. It's something else entirely to live across the street from them when they are young, vibrant people living their lives.
And then there's the scene where Nanette takes Donna to a milk bar, which was sort of the 1960s equivalent of a coffee shop, and she introduces her to Mrs. Rigg.
Can you imagine that conversation? Donna is sitting there, drinking a frothy coffee in a glass cup, having a polite chat with her own grandmother. And around Donna's neck, she's wearing a crucifix.
The crucifix. This is such a brilliant detail.
It's a family heirloom, and it has the initials GR and JR, Gertrude, and Jim Rigg scratched into the back of it. So Donna is sitting there wearing the old, worn version of this crucifix, while sitting across from the woman who owns the new, shiny version of it.
It's an ontological paradox. It's two versions of the same object existing in the same space at the same time. It shouldn't be possible.
But then it gets even heavier. Mrs. Rigg has a pram with her, and inside that pram is a toddler named Kim.
Kim is Donna's mother.
That moment is described as being just visceral. Donna looks into the pram and sees her own mother as a helpless, tiny baby. And the source material says she has a violent physical reaction. She gets a nosebleed right there in the milk bar. She gets dizzy.
It's like her body is physically rejecting the paradox she's witnessing.
Exactly. It's like an organ transplant rejection, but for time. Her biology is screaming that she shouldn't be seeing this. The emotional shock is so great it manifests as physical pain.
And while she's reeling from that shock, another realization hits her. A memory from her childhood in the 90s suddenly unlocks.
This is the darkest, most tragic part of the loop. Donna remembers her parents joking about the dirty old man who lived across the street, a recluse who never left his house but would always be staring out the window at the Rigg family.
And she realizes
Douglas is that man.
That gave me goosebumps when I read it.
It just recontextualizes everything. In the future, Douglas becomes a recluse. Why? Because the sister he found Donna eventually disappears again. He's broken twice, so he just sits in his window watching the house across the street.
And he watches Donna grow up?
He watches this little girl, Donna, playing in the garden, and he must see the resemblance. She looks exactly like the woman he rescued back in 1960. He's not a pervert or a creep. He's a man haunted by a ghost who hasn't even been born yet.
It's a closed time loop of grief. Donna's presence in 1960 is the very thing that creates the trauma that haunts her own childhood.
It's utterly tragic. It turns Douglas from this kind of delusional but harmless figure into a true victim of this cosmic accident.
So Donna is living this impossible double life, surrounded by ghosts and paradoxes. The pressure is just building and building. She has to tell someone the truth, and she chooses the church.
It's a logical move, really. If science, in the form of the doctors, calls you crazy, you turn to the spiritual authority. She goes to Holy Trinity Church with the Fitzgibbons, and she manages to get a private audience with the Reverend Michael Scott.
And he's an old war friend of Douglas, isn't he?
Yes, but that makes him part of Douglas's world. But he exists just outside the immediate family delusion. He's a neutral party. So Donna decides to gamble. She tells him everything.
She drops the Amnesia Act completely. She tells him she's from 2015. She talks about the Beatles, about airbags in cars, about the internet.
She even tells him that in the future, the vicar of that very church will be a woman, a Reverend Eleanor Hughes.
Which, in 1960, must have just blown his mind.
The idea of a female vicar in the Church of England at that time was radical. It was practically inconceivable. But the Reverend, to his credit, just listens. He's a man of faith. He deals with the unseen and the impossible for a living.
And she shows him the proof. The crucifix.
She shows him the worn crucifix with the initials. She points out that the Riggs are young parishioners in his own church. She says essentially, how can I have this old object, their object, if they're currently young?
It's compelling evidence. You can't really argue with it.
It shakes him. The account says he doesn't explicitly say, I believe you are a time traveler, but he validates her suffering. He keeps her secret. And for Donna, it's this rare moment of genuine connection in a world where she is totally and utterly isolated.
But that connection is fleeting. Because outside the sanctuary of the church, the culture shock is just waiting to smack her in the face again. We have to talk about the swimming pool incident.
The visit to Valentine's Park, Lido. This scene is so critical because it moves the conflict from the personal and psychological to the societal.
It's a sunny day, everyone is at the public pool, but then Donna sees something that triggers her 2015 sensibilities.
She witnesses a group of teenage boys harassing two black women. They're throwing water at them, shouting racial abuse. It's just ugly.
Now, in 2015, if you saw that happening, you would hope someone would intervene, or at the very least, people would pull out their phones and start recording. It would become a scene.
In 1960, the reaction of the crowd is silence. They ignore it. They actively look away. It's a combination of that stiff upper lip mentality, don't cause a fuss, and the casual structural racism of the era. To the crowd, the boys are a nuisance, but the women are seen as out of place.
But Donna doesn't have that look-away filter. She is operating on 2015 software.
And she just explodes. She marches over to these boys and confronts them. She screams at them to stop. And she uses language profanity that a lady simply did not use in public in 1960.
She drops the F-bomb.
She unleashes a whole tirade.
Yeah.
And the reaction of the crowd is utter shock. But they are more horrified by Donna's language and her public display of anger than they are by the racism she is opposing.
That is such a perfect and depressing encapsulation of the era's hypocrisy.
It creates this massive scene. She completely disrupts the social order. And the stress of that conflict, the friction between her modern values and the reality of 1960, it causes her to black out again.
It's another one of those physiological rejections.
Her mind and the world she's inhabiting are completely out of sync. It really highlights that time travel isn't just about looking at old cars and funny clothes. It's about values. You would be an alien, morally and ethically, as well as chronologically.
So she's safe, physically, with the Fitzgibbons, but psychologically she is absolutely drowning. She's living a lie. She's hiding from the authorities. She's watching her own family from a distance like a ghost, and she's stuck in a society that she finds backward and deeply frustrating.
And she's trapped. She anxious Google how to get back to 2015. She is completely dependent on the kindness of strangers who are only helping her because they think she's someone else.
I want to circle back to Dr. Armbruster's diagnosis from the very beginning, transient global amnesia.
It's so incredibly ironic, isn't it? Because in a poetic sense, she is suffering from amnesia, not because she has forgotten her past, but because her past, which is actually the future, has forgotten her. She's been erased from 2015. She has a footnote that hasn't even been written yet.
And the physical toll, the nosebleeds, the headaches, the blackouts, it makes you wonder, is the universe itself trying to correct the mistake? Is her body failing because it's in the wrong time?
That's a very valid interpretation.
Yeah.
It's like the immune response of history. She is a foreign body, a pathogen in the timeline, and 1960 is trying to expel her.
And we know from the dirty old man loop that she must eventually leave. Douglas ends up alone, watching the house.
The tragedy is that Douglas accepts her as Katie because he needs to. The human capacity for self-deception in the face of overwhelming grief is just so powerful. He constructs an entire reality where his sister came back. When Donna eventually leaves, and we don't know how that happens, it likely destroys him all over again.
It's what turns him into that sad, lonely figure in the window.
Precisely. It's a story about misconnections. Donna and Douglas are both grieving, her for her parents and her old life, him for his sister. They collide in this impossible way. They help each other briefly, and then the timeline just tears them apart.
It's a really heavy story. It completely challenges the romantic, adventurous idea of time travel.
It does. We tend to think of the past as this fixed, stable thing you can visit, like it's in a history book. But for Donna, it's fluid, it's messy, and it's visceral. It smells like coal and cabbage. It hurts.
And for you, the listener, here is something to chew on. We often fantasize about going back, oh, I'd go back to the 60s, see the Beatles, buy some cheap property.
But would you really want to? If you woke up 55 years in the past, right now, with no ID, no money, and no contacts, could you actually survive?
And maybe more importantly, if you walked down your own street and looked in the window of your own house, Would you like the people you saw inside?
That's the real question, isn't it? Would you recognize your own grandparents as family, or would they just be strangers living across the street? And as Donna sits there in 1960, looking at her toddler mother in a pram, is she merely an observer of history? Or is her very presence altering the woman her mother will eventually become?
Is she, in fact, creating the very future she came from?
It's the grandfather paradox wrapped in a suburban nightmare.
That is a total brain melter. I think I'm going to be thinking about that dirty old man loop for at least a week.
It definitely stays with you.
We're going to leave it there. Thanks for taking this deep dive into the misplaced timeline with us.
It's been a fascinating trip.
Catch you in the future. Or maybe the past.
Take care.
Bye for now.